For 40 years, all I ever dreamed of was a quiet morning. Not the shrill sound of an alarm clock, not the endless buzz of meetings, not the feeling of being rushed through life like a leaf caught in a storm. Just silence and a little bit of peace. I was a squat. For 4 decades, my voice was a constant echo in bustling classrooms, guiding hundreds of children as they navigated the path to adulthood. It was a life of purpose, a life I was proud of. But somewhere along the way, in between grading papers and wiping away tears, I forgot how to live for myself. After my husband passed away far too young, my world narrowed down to one person, my son, Daniel. I raised him alone, pouring every ounce of my being into him. My time, my money, my love, all the silent sacrifices that no one ever sees. I was so incredibly proud when he became a successful businessman, and just as proud when he got married. I was even proud when his new life became so busy that my calls went unanswered. I'd whisper to myself a little mantra of hope. He'll understand when he has his own kids. He'll come back then. But the years passed, and he never did. As retirement loomed, I'd sit in my tiny apartment, the same 4 walls that held every memory of his childhood. The scuff marks on the floor from his first steps, his crooked school pictures still hanging on the wall, the faint echo of my own sobs the night he moved out and never looked back. I realized I couldn't spend my final years staring at a door that would never open, waiting for a call that would never come. I needed to build a life for myself, by myself. So I did something completely unexpected. I bought a farm. The day I signed those papers, I felt a jolt of life I hadn't felt in decades. It was as if the world had switched from black and white to vibrant color. The air out here was so fresh, it felt like a brand new beginning with every breath. The birds weren't just background noise. They were a symphony welcoming me home. The wind whispering through the fields of wheat felt like a gentle, reassuring conversation. It wasn't a grand, sprawling estate by any means. Just a few acres, a humble farmhouse, and a sky that seemed to go on forever. But it was all mine. Every single inch of that land represented freedom. Every sunrise felt like a reward I had truly earned. I started small. I planted a vegetable garden, nurturing tiny seeds into life. I brought home a couple of goats, whose playful antics brought laughter back into my days. With my own aging hands, I began restoring the old farmhouse. My back ached, my knees protested, but it was the sweetest, most satisfying pain I had ever known. It was the pain of creation, of building something just for me. Out here, under the vast open sky, I wasn't just someone's mother anymore. I wasn't a teacher or a caretaker. For the very first time, I was just me, and I was finally learning who that person was. The rhythm of the farm became the rhythm of my life. Waking with the sun, my hands in the soil, the simple pleasure of a meal made from food I grew myself. The quiet wasn't lonely anymore. It was full of the sounds of nature, the satisfaction of hard work, and the peace of a mind no longer waiting. One afternoon, a car I didn't recognize pulled up the long, dusty driveway. It was Daniel. He looked older, more tired than I remembered. He stepped out, looking around at the fields, the barn, my little garden. He said my name, his voice uncertain. "Mum, what is all this?" I didn't feel the old ache of longing. I just smiled, wiping the dirt from my hands onto my jeans. "This is my home, Daniel. This is my life now." He stayed for a while. We didn't talk about the past, about the missed calls or the years of silence. Instead, I showed him the goat who always tries to steal my hat. I had him help me mend a fence post. We sat on the porch as the sun went down, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. For the first time, we weren't a mother waiting and a son who was too busy. We were just two people sharing a quiet moment. He looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "You seem happy." And I was genuinely, deeply happy. When he left, there was no dramatic farewell, just a simple hug and a promise to visit again soon. And I knew whether he did or not, it would be okay. My happiness no longer depended on his return. My world was no longer a small apartment waiting to be filled. It was this vast, beautiful land, and it was already whole. This farm didn't just give me a home, it gave me back to myself. It taught me that it's never too late to plant new seeds, to build a new life, to find peace not in waiting for others, but in creating your own beautiful world. It's a lesson learned late in life, but one I'll cherish for all my remaining days. So if you're out there feeling like you've spent your whole life living for someone else, please know that your story isn't over. Your second, third, or even fourth act is waiting for you. It might not be a farm, but it's something that is yours and yours alone. Go find it. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If it resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you like this video and subscribe to follow along on my journey. See you next time.
I poured every last cent I had into this place, a little farm, my quiet sanctuary, tucked away from the chaos of the city. It was supposed to be my escape, my place to finally heal after a lifetime of putting everyone else first. I remember the day my son, Daniel, called. He'd heard about my new home. "Mom, the family wants to come visit this weekend," he announced, his voice casual, as if he were ordering a pizza. My heart sank. "Daniel, I just moved in. The place is a mess. ... Cut me off. Just get it ready." Those 4 words hung in the air long after he hung up. They tasted like bitterness and duty. Staring at the dusty hallway, I felt the familiar weight of obligation settle on my shoulders. Preparing this place in just 2 days seemed impossible. It would be backbreaking, but a voice in my head, the one that had been there my whole life, whispered, "It's family. You do what you have to do." So, I did. I worked day and night, a one-woman army against chaos. I dragged heavy, antique furniture by myself, my muscles screaming in protest. I scrubbed floors until my knuckles were raw and red. I cooked and cooked and cooked, enough food to feed a small village, wanting everything to be perfect for them. By Sunday morning, I was a wreck. Every bone in my body ached, but the farmhouse. It was pristine. It was ready. Then they arrived. It wasn't a gentle arrival. It was an invasion. 3 cars roared up the gravel driveway, shattering the peace of my little haven. Kids erupted from the vehicles, screaming and trampling through the garden I'd just started to tend. The adults started unloading, not bags of groceries or a thoughtful housewarming gift, but crates of beer and massive portable speakers. Daniel didn't even offer me a hug. He breezed right past me, his eyes scanning the property, and said, "Hey, make sure the rooms are clean. Aunt Carol is allergic to dust." Dust. I wanted to scream. This is a working farm, not a 5-star hermetically sealed hotel. His wife, Mia, gave the house a quick, dismissive glance. She wrinkled her nose, her disdain obvious. "This place is a lot smaller than I expected," she murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. They didn't bring a single thing to contribute. Not a loaf of bread, not a bottle of wine, just a truckload of expectations. That night was a nightmare. They threw a party, a loud, raucous party that felt like a violation of my home. The bass from their speakers vibrated through the old wooden walls, making the windows rattle. The sound of clanking bottles and loud, drunken laughter echoed through my quiet valley. I watched from my window as my newly planted flowers, my little symbols of hope, were crushed under careless, stomping feet. My sanctuary had become their personal frat house. Around those a.m., long after I'd retreated to my room hoping for sleep, my door burst open. Daniel stumbled in, reeking of alcohol, his eyes unfocused. "Mom, the Wi-Fi sucks out here. You need to fix it." His voice was a loud, demanding slur. "Danya," I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. "Please, keep it down. I'm trying to sleep." He let out an exaggerated groan, throwing his hands up in the air. "God, you're always so dramatic. We were just trying to have a nice family trip and you're cool. I didn't even get the basics right." With that, he turned and slammed the door, leaving me alone in the ringing silence. I just sat there in the dark, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My heart, which I thought had started to mend, felt like it was cracking wide open all over again. I bought this farm to escape a life of being used, of being invisible. But in that moment, it felt like I hadn't escaped anything at all. I had just changed the scenery. The next morning, I walked into my kitchen, and my heart stopped. It was a disaster zone. Every pot, every pan, every plate I owned was piled high in the sink and on the counters, caked in grease and old food. The trash was overflowing onto the floor. It was a scene of utter disrespect. Mia woke, in sipping a coffee, and noticed my shocked expression. She laughed, a light, dismissive laugh. "Oh, don't worry about that," she said, waving a hand at the mess. "I told them you'd clean it up. You're so good at that stuff." Good at that stuff. The words echoed in my head. They saw me not as a mother, not as the owner of this home, but as their maid, their unpaid, unappreciated servant. And in that moment, something inside me, a piece of myself I thought had been buried and forgotten long ago, began to stir. It was my self-respect, waking from a long, deep slumber. I looked at her, my voice barely a whisper, and said, "I'm not your servant." Mia just shrugged, completely unfazed, and walked away. Daniel was at the table and didn't even bother to look up from his phone. Later that day, the final straw, Daniel approached me, a piece of paper and a pen in his hand, a look of entitlement on his face. "So, we've been talking," he began, "and we're thinking of making this a regular thing. We'll come up for all the major holidays, maybe some long weekends too." He was planning my life for me, in my own home. "It would be awesome if you could get the old barn renovated into a guest house for everyone. Oh," he added, as an afterthought, "and you should definitely build a pool illucade, Amy," expecting me to nod and agree, to start making a to-do list. But I just stared at him. The barn. A pool. He wasn't asking. He was demanding. I saw my life's savings, my last hope for peace, as nothing more than his personal free-of-charge vacation resort. And in that moment, I knew the woman who scrubbed floors until her knuckles bled was gone. The woman who just wanted everyone to be happy was gone. A new woman was standing in her place, and she was about to set some boundaries. I took a deep breath, feeling a strength I hadn't felt in years. "Daniel," I said, my voice clear and firm. "No," he blinked, confused. "No. What do you mean? No. I mean no," I repeated. "There'll be no guests. There will be no pool. And there will be no more weekends like this. This is my home, Daniel. Not your resort. It's a place for me to live, not a place for you and your family to destroy." Mia, who had overheard, scoffed. "You can't be serious. Where's your family?" "Are you?" I asked, looking from her entitled face to my son's bewildered one. "Family doesn't treat people like this. Family doesn't demand and take and disrespect. You've been guests in my home for less than 24 hours, and you have shown me zero respect, zero gratitude, and zero consideration." I gestured to the trashed kitchen, the trampled garden. "This ends now. The party is over. I want you to pack your things, clean up the mess you made, and leave." Silence. The kind of shocked silence that follows an explosion. Daniel's face turned red with anger. "You're kicking us out. Your own family." "I am reclaiming my home," I said, standing taller than I had in decades, and my life. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but as their cars finally pulled away, kicking up dust on the gravel drive, a sense of peace settled over my farm. A real peace, not the fragile kind I'd been hoping for. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of possibility, full of freedom. For the first time, this little farm truly felt like mine. I walked through my quiet, messy house, but I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt powerful, because I wasn't just cleaning up their mess. I was cleaning out a lifetime of being taken for granted, and it was the most beautiful mess I had ever seen. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It is a reminder that it is never too late to stand up for yourself and claim your own peace. If this resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories about finding your strength. See you next time. He smiled at me a proud, self-satisfied grin, as if he were bestowing some great honor upon me. "A pool?" he announced, his voice booming with unearned authority. "Right over there, and we'll convert the old barn into a guest house for when our friends visit." I felt the air leave my lungs. A pool. A guest house. For them? Here? In my sanctuary. I looked around at the rolling hills, the ancient oak trees, the quiet fields that had promised me peace. This wasn't part of the dream. This was a nightmare. "I bought this place for peace, Daniel," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "I want to live a quiet life." His smile vanished, replaced by a deep frown of disapproval. "Mom? Don't be selfish." Selfish. That one word hit me like a physical blow. Selfish. After all the years I'd spent raising him on my own, working 2 jobs so he could go to a good school, sacrificing my own dreams so he could chase his. After everything I had given him, everything I had done, I was the one being selfish. It was a cruel, twisted irony. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if we were partners in some grand scheme. "We deserve to enjoy your retirement too, you know." And that was it. That was the moment the veil was torn away. My love, my sacrifices, my entire life's work as a motherate hadn't just been taken for granted. No, it was worse than that. It was expected. It was an entitlement. I wasn't his mother. I was a resource to be tapped. My home wasn't a haven. It was a future vacation property. The realization settled in my chest, a cold, heavy stone. That night, sleep was a distant country I couldn't visit. While the sounds of their laughter and music echoed from the house, I sat alone on the front porch, wrapped in a thin blanket. The moonlight was a gentle brushstroke across the fields, and the crickets chirped their steady, peaceful chorus. They sounded like tiny guardians, trying to protect a peace that was already under siege. I asked myself the hard questions under that vast, starry sky. Why was I allowing this? Why was I letting my own son the boy I had poured my entire heart into, dismantle the only happiness I had managed to build for myself in my later years. Was this really what my golden years were supposed to look like? A constant battle to defend my own home from the people I loved most. Tears began to fall, silent and hot on my cheeks. I wasn't crying because they didn't love me. I was crying because I finally, painfully, understood that they never would. Not in the way I needed them to. Not with the respect and consideration that I deserved. Their love was conditional, transactional. It was a love that only flowed in one direction, from me to them. The final, shattering blow came the next morning. I walked into the kitchen, drawn by the smell of coffee, only to find Daniel and his girlfriend Mia huddled over my dining table with a calendar. They were laughing, excitedly circling dates, planning party weekends for every single month. My quiet farmhouse was to become their personal party hub. My peace was just an inconvenient detail to be scheduled around. I stood there for a moment, invisible, listening to them carve up my life into social events. Then, a strange calm washed over me. I approached the table. "Daniel," I said, my voice even and quiet. He glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. "What is it, Mom?" "This is my home," I stated simply. "Not yours." He actually rolled his eyes. He rolled his eyes at his own mother, in her own home. "Mom, you're old. You should be happy. We even want to visit. Other parents would kill for this kind of attention from their kids." Then he laughed, a short, dismissive chuckle, as if I were the punchline to a joke, only he understood. That was the spark that lit the fuse. He took a deep, steadying breath. In that moment, a decision that had been forming in the quiet darkness of the previous night solidified in my heart. "It was time. It's time for you to leave," I said. The words felt liberating. It started at his face, a mask of disbelief, as if I'd suddenly started speaking in a foreign language. "What? You all need to go," I repeated, looking from him to Mia to the others who were now listening, their smirks fading. "No," Mia scoffed, crossing her arms. "You can't just kick us out. We're family." Family. The word sounded hollow, a weapon they used to get what they wanted. I looked at each of their faces, young, entitled, and completely devoid of empathy. They didn't see a person standing before them, a mother with feelings and needs. They saw an obstacle, an inconvenience, so I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a calm, powerful smile. The smile of a woman who is finally taking back control. "You're right," I said, my voice soft. "I can kick you out." Their smug expressions returned instantly. They exchanged triumphant glances, thinking they had won. They thought my resolve had crumbled, that I had folded, just like I always did. And that's why. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I held it up for them to see. "I already sold the farm." Silence. A thick, suffocating silence descended on the room. You could have heard a pin drop. Then, the dam of their entitlement broke, and chaos flooded the kitchen. Daniel leaped to his feet, his face turning a blotchy red. "What? Who did you sell it to? You can't just—" "It's already done," I said, cutting through his sputtering rage. My voice was the calm at the center of the storm. "The new owners arrive tomorrow morning. You have until then to pack your things and go." I placed the document on the table and turned, walking away from the life I was leaving behind, and toward the quiet, peaceful future I had just reclaimed for myself. He stormed toward me, his face a mask of pure fury. "You're making a huge mistake. Where will we go for vacations?" "We." It was always about we, never about me. I looked at him, my voice barely a whisper, but steady. "I don't know. And for the first time, I don't care." The house filled with the sounds of their anger. Bags being packed with unnecessary force. Doors slamming so hard the walls seemed to shake. Insults muttered just loud enough for me to hear, like little daggers thrown over their shoulders. It was a symphony of disrespect I had listened to for years. Before walking out for the last time, Daniel, my eldest, turned back. His eyes were cold. "You'll regret this. You'll be all alone. No one will want you. I braced myself for the familiar sting, the sharp pain that always followed his cruel words. But this time, nothing. The words floated past me, hollow and powerless. For the first time in my entire life, his words didn't hurt. It was a strange, liberating silence in my soul. The moment their cars peeled out of the driveway, disappearing down the road, it felt like the entire world exhaled with me. A collective sigh of relief. The birds, which had seemed silent for so long, started chirping again. The wind, which always felt harsh, softened into a gentle caress against my skin. And my heart, which had been a battlefield of anxiety and pain for decades, was finally, beautifully quiet. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of peace. The next morning, a car I didn't recognize pulled up. A young woman with the kindest eyes I had ever seen stepped out. She looked around at the gardens I had poured my soul into, a warm, genuine smile spreading across her face. "This place is incredible," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "We want to turn this into a sanctuary for rescued animals, a place for healing." She looked directly at me then, her smile deepening. "Your hard work here, all this love you've put into the land, it won't be forgotten." Then she made an offer that felt like a dream. "There's a small cabin down by the lake," she gestured. "It's simple, but it's yours. Free of charge, if you'd like to stay and help out occasionally." She paused, and her next words were the ones that truly healed something deep inside me. "Not as a servant, not as a caretaker, but as a partner, a person with value." Tears welled in my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition. I accepted without a moment's hesitation. Today, my life is completely different. I wake up not to the sound of demands, but to the soft ripples of water against the lakeshore, and the gentle morning sunlight filtering through my window. I spend my days feeding goats who nuzzle my hands as if I am the most important person in the world. I sit on my small porch with a warm cup of tea, watching a world that no longer takes pieces of me, but instead fills me up. Daniel hasn't called. None of them have, and maybe they never will. But the strange thing is, I'm at peace with that. I'm more than at peace. I am. Well, because I finally learned a fundamental truth. When you give every single piece of yourself to others, they eventually forget you have anything left to take. They just expect more. And when you finally choose yourself, when you finally draw that line in the sand and say no more, you don't actually lose your family. You just lose the people who were never really family to begin with. My happiness didn't come from someone else giving it to me. I found it the very moment I stopped asking others for permission to be happy. I gave it to myself. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd like and subscribe for more stories about finding your own path. Take care.